Welcome to another episode of Invigorate Your Business with George Stroumboulis. Today's episode comes from Toronto, Canada, and I get to sit down with a wine expert who has built a national distribution center where he's servicing the entire country of Canada and now into the United States. Steve Kriaris has sharp business acumen and has just developed an impressive business. So we're gonna dive into everything you need to know about the distribution of food, alcohol, and beverage products on today's episode, starting now. My name is George Stroumboulis, and I'm extremely passionate about traveling the world, meeting new people, and learning about new businesses. Join me as I sit down with other entrepreneurs to learn about their journeys. This episode of Invigorate Your Business starts now. So we're rolling. We are in the wonderful city of Toronto.
We are, yes.
And I'm sitting here with Steve Kriaris, who is the founder, president, CEO of Kolonaki Group.
I am, yeah.
Kolonaki Group is a national distribution company of alcohol, beverages, fine foods, just curating, luxury wines and different spirits and champagnes from around the world, right? Multiple countries. And just over the years, talking with you, following each other socially and just, circles, your business acumen is like just extremely sharp. How you're operating your business, how you survived, especially in this space coming out of COVID, and just launching an online business and then going down in the States. I'm excited that you're here. So I appreciate the time.
My pleasure.
In your
Thank
city,
you for having me.
Right? Even though I was born here, it's your city.
Well, you never know, you might be back again.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
So Steve, talk to us. How do you describe Kolonaki Group?
Kolonaki Group. I started Kolonaki Group in 2000, so it's been my 24th year in business, importing IOLI water. That's how I got into business. Also nicknamed the Water Boy back then.
Okay.
When I was 29 years old, and I just wanted to try something totally different because I was in the bar business at the time. Well, the Greeks would call me Onerolas. Onerolas was Police Nero, and everybody else called me the Water Boy. Also nicknamed Steve Ioli in the city by everybody. That was my last name. But and then we got into some alcoholic beverages, and then more fine foods, and then now we're at about 200 different SKUs in the fine food world, and about 100 different SKUs in the fine wines and spirits business, and then so the pandemic in many ways helped my business. In many ways it didn't, obviously, for the obvious reasons, because we're so heavily invested in food service on premise that when those all closed down, there went all the business sort of thing. But we picked up many other ways because we had two things on our hands. A, we had time to build our online platform, which went live like 16 days prior to the lockdown. So the timing was exceptional. And we did some pretty amazing things online, which helped us get discovered by a lot of people, because when they're all at home searching for products, our name kept popping up more and more and more. So we had some pretty intense sales on the online world. And the other thing that the pandemic gave me was time.
Right.
It forced me to stop. It forced me to think. It forced me to reevaluate. It forced me to look at the products you're selling today and is this the future kind of thing, right? Are you going to take this and you're going to grow these brands sort of thing, right? Where are you going with the company? And so one of the things that we always had trouble with was, what does Kolonaki do? What is Kolonaki Group, right? So nobody knew what it did, or because it doesn't say in the name what it was and stuff. And I used to always say, it's Kolonaki Group, only for those in the know. So every once in a while when I would go to Greece, Kolonaki, for those who don't know, is the first ever aristocratic suburb in Athens. And so it's like the Yorkville of Toronto, if you will. Yep. And so I always wanted to associate the name of the company with just premium quality, etc. And in those days, every time you walked to one of the cafes or bars and restaurants, IOLI water was being served in all those little restaurants and bars and stuff. So it kind of was perfect naming for me. And I love hanging out in the area as well. So I thought, you know what? For those who know, they know. My 29-year-old ego self of mine saying, you either know Kolonaki or you don't, sort of thing. Exactly. So every once in a while, I would go to I'd walk to Kolonaki and it'd be like one of those street signs saying Kolonaki this way. And I'd stand up and kind of point at the sign, and I'd post it on social media. And it used to get the most comments and likes of anything else that I posted. It's like, oh my God, it really exists. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
But if people do know, like Kolonaki.
Of course. For those who know, right?
You know, yeah.
So,
why didn't you call it Da Capo?
I didn't call it Da Capo. I was trying to avoid any one of those cliche Greek names, like Acropolis Imports or something like that, right? So I just wanted to avoid all the cliche names that had to do with the previous generation of how they were doing things. And I just wanted to go something totally modern, totally premium, and just stay at that, which is kind of our mindset as a company. And the ethos is we just got to keep selling all the premium products from wherever we're sourcing them from, sort of thing. And then what the pandemic did with the time was it allowed me to finally stop and say, okay, Kolonaki Group has now blossomed into much more than just importing water. So we finally were able to rebrand, and we created Kolonaki Group of companies.
Okay.
So then we have one division, which is the Kolonaki Fine Foods and Beverages. So it's kind of a non-alcoholic importing company. We did a national agency, Kolonaki Fine Wines and Spirits, so that we isolated the actual alcohol business so we can become an agency across Canada and look to expand in different markets. And then the last one, which was supposed to go live in the pandemic, which was Kolonaki Fine Lifestyle. So I have a third division, which we didn't go live with, because if you remember my prediction back then,
yes,
we got a couple of months after this.
Yeah.
So the third option was to do the lifestyle component, which was supposed to be agrotourism, enotourism, and then be able to sell everything that's non-consumable goods. So it could be like, clay plates from Eos Island or something. It could be like cutlery, it could be napkins, it could be like all the different things that you buy in the home, purses, jewelry, etc. from Greece.
Yeah.
And then you get everybody into a plane, you fly to Greece, you tour the islands or wherever you're going to take them.
Amazing.
They'd pick up all the different things they want, olive oils, whatever, and then you come back and then all your goods would arrive to your home. The problem was during the pandemic, we were trying to get this going every time, and the extension of the lockdowns, I couldn't get anyone on a plane.
Yes.
So eventually the lifestyle division had to just be put dormant for the time being and stuff. So we've left it dormant since then, but it's one of our projects we want to get into in the future, is to be able to offer agrotourism, enotourism, in Greece and the Southern Mediterranean.
That would be remarkable, right?
Yeah.
Like just, yes.
Yeah. And it kind of follows part and parcel of what we're doing right now, and then you can actually take them to the olive groves, get them to make some olive oil, take them to the vineyards, see how the grapes are growing and whatnot, and then learn firsthand what's going on there.
Because you're essentially already doing that from tastings and going out there and educating people. Like even though you have this large company right now, physically large space, hundreds of SKUs, clients, you're in the best clubs, restaurants across the country. Yeah. You still make it a point to have wine tastings, to bring people, to curate, and do that.
Yeah.
Do you need to do that? Is that why you've become so successful? Just being on the ground level?
For me, everything has to be about grassroots. Like I started Grassroots, like knocking on doors myself. I was delivering out of my Honda Accord in the trunk, just going door to door, knocking on doors, delivering water just to get the ball rolling. So I know that, as an owner, operator, entrepreneur, you need to also be at that ground level too, to understand what's going on in the market and listen in to see how the market is changing and evolving, because the market has changed and evolved, right? Like when I started back in 2000, internet didn't exist. We didn't have online stores, right? So you had to go knock on doors like a classic salesman, if you will, and then just hit up everybody you could and get as much volume going as much as possible, right? And so everything's evolved and changed. So I either evolved and learned the new way, or just perished kind of thing, right? And many people in the industry have perished over the years because they weren't able to evolve. And that's what I find. So for me, the evolution was a big thing for us. So the division of the company and then having the two different divisions was great. And then fast forward just another year, we own a few of our own brands, wines, fine foods, etc. And forever and a day, I've always wanted to kind of find a place or a way to kind of house those under their own little portfolio. And then I discovered this Greek word called orama, which is the Greek word for vision or foresight.
Yes.
And it was told to me by someone about 4 years ago in the pandemic, 3-4 years ago in the pandemic. And I just fell in love with the name. Yeah. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do with this name, but one day I'm going to open up a company. It's going to be called Orama. And so we ended up opening up Orama Group of Companies. Yep. Because now I have forward thinking. And so the first division was Orama Brands. So now all of our brands are under the umbrella of Orama Brands. And that was year one, was last year. And we just launched Orama Brands EK. So we have a Greek company now. Okay, so we'll officially be operating out of Greece as an official Greek company, which is exciting. We just got that done about a week and a half ago. And our first shipment just left from Greece about a week and a half ago. So congrats. Perfect timing. Thank you. So I actually printed off the bill of lading and I framed it and I put it up on the wall in the office. And the first thing you see when you come in is our first ever, bill of lading for first ever shipment leaving Greece under the brand name of Orama, the Greek company. Right. And for listeners, Orama, O-R-A-M-A. Correct. Just so they, okay. Yeah. Dude, that's exciting. Yeah. So there's so many ways we could go from here. You start this, you have your 3 divisions, right? You're growing, you're in the States, but actually finding the product, right? It's not just Greece, right? You're bringing in from Italy, from France, from New Zealand, right? All these countries, from the US, and not just wine, not just water. We're talking champagne, we're talking everything. Talk to us, how do you even go about like a typical cycle of finding the right
producer of wine, for example, getting them on the shelves here at the LCBO? Like, what does that process even look like? And then what are the costs? Do you pay for it? Is it on the LCBO? Like, how does that work?
Okay, so those are two questions there. So the first one is, how do you vet a producer and stuff? I'll start by saying that not all of my selections were ever successful.
Okay.
That's for sure. So you do have brands that you think are going to be the next big thing. You bring them in and they don't actually make it anywhere. But you learn. If all I can ever ask for from my mistakes is to learn from my mistakes, then eventually you learn and you figure out. Like, one time I had a producer that I thought was the next big thing. And as I was growing his product, he started running out of product. And I'm like, hey, dude, I need like 500 more cases. He's like, I can't get you 500 more cases. I need 3 months to make 500. I'm like, what? So then I realized I should have asked the question, what is your volume? How much can you produce of this product, right?
Yep.
Not knowing that up front.
Which seems like common sense, but when you're growing,
right.
you just
want to run, right? You want to take a product and run. So I take it and run, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, he doesn't have enough supply for this product. So now the first thing I ask right away is, how much volume are you producing? If I think it's going to be a big brand, I need to know what the capacity is, maybe even visit the winery or the production plant or the olive oil, whatever it is,
yep.
and understand to know, because now over the years, I can walk into a place and I'll know whether it's legit or not, kind of thing, right? Like most suppliers, I can do that, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Then you walk into their facility and it's like, no, you can't.
Yeah. Sell first, figure it out later.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've learned from my mistakes and stuff. But I mean, there have been many brands that have been very successful for us, as we mentioned a little while ago. And so it's a lot of it's my visceral gut. I need to think that this brand needs to be in our market. And then why? What problem is this product solving? Right? There has to be a reason why. What's the why and why you bring a product here, right? Not just because you think it's great. It has to solve some sort of a problem. Maybe it's a missing varietal. Maybe it's quality of an olive oil, or maybe a region of a in Italy that no one has heard of before or something. When we launched Armand de Brignac Champagne, Ace of Spades, which is Jay-Z's brand at the time, I launched it with Sovereign Brands. I was dealing with Brett Barish and Scott Cohen at the time. And, I was not even in the champagne space at all. But I have a lot of relationships in the club industry, the hotels, etc. And when I was being interviewed to take on the brand, because at that level they interview you.
Of course.
You don't just go there and interview them, sort of thing. The first thing they asked me is, what champagne brands do you work with? And I said, I don't work with any champagne brands. They're like, so what makes you think you can sell this champagne brand? I said, that's the only reason why I'm going to sell the champagne brand. I go, because it's me against them. And they're like, oh, okay. We never looked at it like that.
Absolutely.
I said, yeah. I go, I got to fight with, Cristal. I got to fight with, Dom Perignon. I got to fight with all the big brands with the champagne brand that we're going to have in our hands. So, and, that was part of the confidence you need to have in yourself and what you believe in and stuff. And then we brought in the champagne and...
So hold on, you're just touching over that, but that's a big deal. Jay-Z champagne brand.
Yes.
One of the hottest in the city, right? Ace of Spades, right? Like, and not just the champagne, the way it's presented.
Everything,
flashy, everything that comes with that. Before that, you were wine, foods, water.
Before that, I was just, everything was imported from Greece.
Okay.
And then that year, it was around 2010, a very pivotal year, as you know from my history. 2010 was a pivotal year. And what happened was I expanded. And so Armand de Brignac Champagne was in our portfolio. And at the same time, I met Michiel Aratis from New Zealand. And I'm like, I really want to sell your New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc in my market. So we were on the phone, and I'll never forget, I was in the house at the time. We can say whatever we want here, right?
Absolutely, yeah. F-bombs, anything,
it was my son Peter, and I had a new crib for him, and I was on the phone with him in one ear. Didn't have any, earpods back then. And I have tools in my hand and I'm building the crib. Because it was like 8 p.m. at night and New Zealand's like 16 hours ahead or whatever it is. And I'm talking to the guy, the producer on the phone, and he's kind of interviewing with me back and forth. And I'm like, yeah. And here I am with the ratchet going on, trying to build the crib. And the kid's got to get to bed in half an hour. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. Sure, no problem at all. And then, we hit it off and stuff. And then I've become very good friends with Michiel over the years and stuff.
The crib never made it. Like it crashed the next day, but
the bar stayed up.
You got the contract.
I got the contract, and so we brought it in and stuff, and that was great too. So, and then from there, once I became comfortable with having brands that were not from Greece, because in the beginning I think, okay, being Greek, I gotta have Greek products. No, it's the opposite actually. So it's what can I bring to the other brands, and that's what I learned early on. And then from there, we just kept expanding into other products from other regions. And now in our wine portfolio, we have wines from about 10 different countries, 12 different countries, including South Africa, Portugal, Italy, Spain. We have an amazing producer in Spain that we work with called Ego Bodegas. Ioana is the owner-operator there, and she's an amazing person to work with. We met many years ago at ProVine, which is the biggest wine fair in the world in Germany.
Okay.
And we hit it off, and she's like, you know what, let's do this. And we did it. And now in our category, it's one of the most successful Spanish labels called Guru in the category. And that's been exciting for us. And we just keep growing. So we took the Ace of Spades, and once we got listed, even though nobody believed we'd ever achieve this, because we were being bashed left, right, and center for the first 2 years. You know, everybody hated on us. And then
who's everybody? Like in the industry?
It's BS. Who's Jay-Z? Why are you selling this stuff for? Where do you think you're going? A million and one different things, you know? And for me, I love that stuff.
Yes.
Like I wake up in the morning 2 hours earlier just to go to work and work even harder when somebody's telling me you can't do this.
You're feeding off that, right? Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to prove you guys can do this. And then I eventually got listed at the LCBO. And then within 1 year, we were double Cristal's numbers in 1 year. Yeah. So it was a huge success. And the brand, at that point, everybody just shut up and said, okay, this is now becoming the next big brand, which it did in that price band category. And at one point, I can tell you there were multiple venues, clubs, bars, hotels, restaurants, everywhere that were just carrying the product.
Just carrying it.
Yeah. And it became a thing, and it actually grew almost like a grassroots movement, like in the sense that Ace became like a Toronto champagne in a way.
Yes.
Because of the whole way we started, selling out of my trunk, believe it or not.
That's crazy.
Going around to places and delivering out of my car, believe it. And that's how it started. So it kind of became its own thing within Toronto. And I think we became like the 5th biggest market in North America for the champagne brand. Yeah. So that was great. And
are you kidding me? Like, did you ever get to meet Jay-Z?
I didn't. No.
Okay.
No. The closest I got was meeting Sebastien Besson, who was his CEO of Sean Carter Enterprises, who eventually bought Armand de Brignac from Sovereign Brands. But I mean, he worked directly under Jay-Z, and I knew with the chain of commands what was going on, which was great. And they were a great team as well. And we expanded, they grew the brand. And then eventually he sold the champagne brand afterwards for a huge sum of money, which is amazing. But I stayed loyal, as always, to Sovereign Brands, who started Armand de Brignac. And then eventually they launched another brand called Belaire.
Belaire, yes.
Which you may have heard about. Yep. And that's with Rick Ross and another half a dozen very popular artists. And we launched Belaire here, and it was kind of the same thing all over again. Like, what is this, product, and where's it from, and who's behind it, and why are you doing this for, and whatever. And I said, you know what, just let me do my thing. The cool thing was that learning from your mistakes with Armand, which took me probably an extra 2 years to kind of prove we could do this, I was able to get Belaire into the market much faster. And then within that category, we became the number one sparkling rosé in the sparkling rosé category here in Ontario. And we blew away the competition in that category. Jeez. Yeah, and we were number one, and we ran that for probably almost 8 years straight, nonstop. And the pandemic is what really blew us up.
For both of those? Like, did they...
At the time, so before the pandemic, Armand got sold, so we no longer worked with a brand. But I mean, I'm still a big supporter because it's one of the brands that put me on the map here in the city and in the country for that matter. And then Belaire did the same thing for us. And then during the pandemic, because you're always growing every brand you work with, obviously. And then right when the pandemic came, everybody stayed home. They all went shopping at the LCBO or the SAQ in Quebec. And they were all just buying up Belaire and drinking at home.
Right.
And then I looked at the numbers, and I would see the weekly numbers coming in, and it's like, you're up, 14% year over year this week versus last year. Okay, then the next week would come in, you're up 21%. It's like, wow, okay, interesting. The next week come, you're up 22%.
While the world shut down.
Yeah, and I'm sitting at home watching the numbers week after week coming in, because you get weekly reports.
Yeah.
And I was just mesmerized. And then at one point, I think we were up like 110% week over week, year over year, as the brand kept going over and over and over again. The numbers were just like, it was insane how much champagne we were selling at the time. And it was the right product at the right time, the right promotion behind it. And we had done all the back end work. So when the pandemic hit, yes, all of our online business shut down, but everything we had at the retail business blew up for us.
Yes.
And then going back to the fine food side, we then had retailers calling in and saying, hey, I know you guys have olive oil, for example. I said, yeah. And I'm like, how'd you guys get our number? They go, we just researched you guys online, and we know you have these olive oils. We're out of olive oil. We can't get olive oil in the market, for example, because the shipments were a big issue.
Yes.
People couldn't get stuff shipped out to them.
Containers locked up.
Everything. So basically China bought all the containers.
Yep.
They shipped them over to China so that only their goods would get into the North American market, especially in Europe. And then the rest of Europe got shut out with no containers. So there's a lot of delays. So, may the best man win, or whoever had inventory won the battle here. It wasn't really about price at that point. It's just, Do you have stock or do you not have stock?
And you had stock at the time?
Yes and no.
Okay.
But what was great was when they called and I did have stock, all of a sudden you see like 300% increase in your sales because, you know, they would just buy up whatever you had at that time sort of thing. And eventually we would just keep doubling down our orders. So from 2021, 2022, 23, like we just keep increasing orders by 100% every time.
Jeez.
Until you got to the point where you're saturated now with inventory. And then you're like, okay, whoa, the demand now has slowed down. We have too much inventory sort of thing. So then 2023 was the year for us to kind of cut back on what we're ordering to kind of realign our buying patterns to be more in line with where we're going today. So we had, you know, 2023 was our best year pretty much to date.
Amazing.
Which is exciting. This year, we're already up 20% over last year, which is kind of exciting as well. Not easy.
Not easy, man.
Because as I was mentioning before, like for me right now, growth is amazing. We all love growth. I get it. But it can become more difficult because now you're putting more stress on the operational side of the business, right? Because now it's like you're doing 1/5 more than what you were doing last year with the same staff.
Yes.
Right. So now there's a lot more work to be done.
And how much can you push that until you need to add more staff? Correct. You don't want to overhire. Like it's a balancing act.
It's a balancing act.
Just really quick on that point, you had mentioned like even during the growth, you're ordering to keep up with demand. A lot of the times when you're just growing, it's so hard to even control inventory. When money's coming in, you're like, just order. And then you get into that period where there's a slowdown. I'm sure you had to do a whole inventory evaluation on
expiring products. You know, dates are coming up in 2 months. We have like 6,000 cases. What do you got to do with them? We got to move them out as fast as possible.
Fire sale. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
absolutely. You know. Really quick. So Jay-Z, right? Going back to that, then Belaire was whose brand?
Sovereign Brand started the brand, but Rick Ross was one of the main people behind the product. Yeah.
So aside from there's ego, there's Can I Get It? And you won those brands essentially to represent them and grow. Were they good products? Like compared to the Moët and the Cristal? Like, did you actually enjoy the
value for money? I love the products, yes.
Okay.
Which is important to me. And you know, I have to tell you one thing, especially when it comes to the liquor business. Actually, this relates to pretty much everything, but especially in alcohol, is what emotions do you evoke from the product, right? And so one of the things that I've seen with Armand is like the people who were coming to us in the beginning when we were selling on the streets, they were just so happy to part with $300 to get a bottle to know that they were buying one of Jay-Z's champagnes. That's what it came down to. Or that Beyonce had in one of her music videos. So we would have girls showing up and they were literally counting 20s and 10s to get $300 together to buy one of the bottles and go home and do like an Instagram reel or story or whatever the case may be sort of thing, right? And because it evoked an emotion in them.
Yeah.
That's what it came down to. But the reality is that $300 a bottle, retail in the clubs is $1,000. Not everybody can afford that.
No.
So the firestorm that occurred with Belaire, when Belaire came out at $40 a bottle, fair, not champagne from Champagne, France, but it was a sparkling wine from Provence, at $40 a bottle, it was accessible to everybody. So now I'll never forget this. I was sitting with Brett Barish in John Varvatos' store in Soho in those days, because he was a huge Varvatos fan as well. And we were just talking about getting Belaire going. And then he's like, are you okay if we do like 3 times the volume of Belaire? I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. I go, we can do maybe 4 or 5 times the volume. He goes, yeah. He goes, if we can do that, he goes, we're set. I said, okay. Well, we ended up doing 20 times the volume or 25 times the volume of Armand, but it's all relevant to dollars and cents, right? It's $40 a bottle. So there's a difference in the value there. But what we realized with Belaire was people were coming in and saying, no, I don't want a bottle. I'll take all 6 bottles. Sort of buying by the case sort of thing, right? And it's the same thing. They just wanted to go home, drink the product, and it evoked an emotion in them. And it's the same thing. Like when you're drinking a very expensive wine from, Tuscany or a Barolo or a big wine from Napa Valley, right? There is something involved. There's an emotion involved in the whole consumption of that product. Is it better than other wines? Maybe. Maybe not, right? But the reality is you're emotionally attached to a lot of the brands out there.
Right.
And, we see it all the time with people who have wealth. They want to go and buy a Mercedes because they feel that there's an emotional connection, that there's a status involved and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
Is the Mercedes better than another German car? Maybe, maybe not, but the reality is it's emotion. So emotions are always involved, right? In everything we do, right? And so one of the great things that these products do, and a lot of the brands that's one of the things we work on from a marketing perspective, is just getting people emotionally attached. So going back to what you're saying about, tourism, once you go to a vineyard, like if you go to Greece summer and that's into a vineyard, once you go to the vineyard and you spend the day there, you're going to be emotionally attached to that vineyard and those wines and what that wine means. And, I was there that summer when they were doing harvest kind of thing, and you'll never forget that you're sharing that story. Yeah. So you're emotionally attached, emotionally involved, right? And that's the beautiful thing about products that we consume a lot of times is there's a lot of times an emotion involved.
So to that point on emotions, do you think once talking about liquor brands, Casamigos, George Clooney, right? Jay-Z selling his brand. When they actually sell the brand, do you think people leave the brand?
I don't think I know.
Okay, so explain that,
both
because
brands have.
Because I roll my eyes now where I'm like, okay, what celebrity is launching which tequila brand? It's just the market's
out of control. Out of control.
So what is it? The minute someone drops it, does it lose its luster?
Well, you lose the street cachet for starters. And typically it's, some big corporation that's buying the brand, because they're the only ones that have the money to buy the brand at those dollars and cents.
Sure.
And then sort of what ends up happening is that you lose the emotional connection to the product, right? So if you look at Armand, the Bragnac sales now, they're down like 50%. Right. And sliding even further down, sort of thing, right? Belaire is down 40%.
Right.
Right. Once it left from our hands and it was no longer the street brand that we were getting out there and selling to people and whatnot. And now it's just become this big corporate brand. I can just buy any corporate brand I want at this point. It doesn't matter to this brand anymore, right? So no one's attached to the brand anymore, sort of thing, right? And then when that happens, the sales do go down.
Amazing.
And then the question is, how do you get it back up again? There's no silver bullet there. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of money if you can ever achieve it again. That's the problem that I find, is the cyclicalness of all these products. They usually get about a 10, 12-year lifespan. I mean, Armand had a longer lifespan because it was one of the original ones, right? When Jay-Z first aired it in his music video called Show Me What You Got, he has a briefcase with him in the casino, and they bring him Cristal, and he says, get it out of here. And then it's like, they bring him a bottle of Ace, and he's like, give it to the girl across from me he was playing poker with. And so it had a longer lifespan because that was the first time we ever got introduced to somebody having sort of a challenge with a brand and then bringing out his own brand and then making it into what it became, sort of thing. So, I mean, Jay-Z has paved the way in many ways for many people to make millions and billions off of liquor brands, because he did that back in the 2008, whatever it was.
Yes.
Right. So, but Jay-Z is Jay-Z because for that reason.
But before that, there was a lot of, just talking about hip hop, a lot of rappers were using their own beverages.
Yeah.
But they weren't making money. The Hennessy was like an industry, but nobody was on the brand side, right? Like actually benefiting from it. So Jay-Z comes out, he actually has a financial interest in this. So let me ask you, if knowing the cycle, are there other brands that you're looking at to bring in, knowing that these fade out over time?
Yes, there are. What I can tell you today publicly now, it's official now, we just signed with Curtis 50 Cent. So we now represent his champagne brand and his cognac brand.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Huge. So our first shipment arrives in Toronto probably in about 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we're really excited about that. And
can you share his brand?
Le Chemin de Roi is the name of the champagne, and Branson Cognac is the cognac brand. So they're going to be in the market very soon, and he's coming to visit as well. So I'm excited about that. He'll be here early July. So it's going to be... That's
incredible, man. So this is the next one, and the product, you like it, it tastes...
Yeah, they sent me all the samples. We tried it with the whole team. Everybody loved it. Packaging is great. And I think the market's ready for what is the next brand in that segment, because everything else has been purchased and bought up by the big corporate guys. Yep. So I think it's going to be good timing.
Man, good luck. Continued success.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, how does it actually work? So when you're representing a big brand like this, and we could talk about the smaller wine brands as well. Course. What's the business side of it, in that you order one case, for example, it physically comes here. Do you, as Steve, who owns this group, pays for that case, and then you...
So the dollars and cents are in Canada, for the majority of Canada, outside of Alberta, of course. Everything has to go through the liquor boards. So the only importer on record are the liquor boards. Gotcha. So in this case, in Ontario, it's the LCBO. So we say to them, I want to order 50 cases of the champagne, round numbers. The LCBO creates a purchase order, sends to the producer sends it over from France. It ends up in their warehouse. And there's a couple of distribution channels that we have as an option. One of them is what they call consignment, where we are able to go buy the case from the LCBO warehouse and then deliver to the restaurant or the consumer. Or you might call up and say, Steve, I want a case of your champagne. No problem, George. Here's your order. I bring it to you. You pay us. And away we go. The other option is when you get a listing on the shelves, where the same idea, where your purchase order is placed, they pay the supplier, then the purchase order arrives. When it arrives, it gets taken out to the LCBO retail stores, and then it gets distributed to 10, 20, 30, 40 locations, whatever it is. Okay. And then consumers can go in and buy one bottle at a time, which is great. And then you also get the visibility, right? So when you're in the champagne category buying other champagnes, oh, wow, there's a new champagne in the market, sort of thing, right? So and you get the majority of the 15 million consumers that are buying alcohol here in Ontario for us.
See, I didn't know, being from Canada, I didn't know that's how it works. So does that benefit a distributor where the government is essentially fronting?
Well, the benefit is it's the barrier to get in the market is very low because you're not putting up your own money, right? The challenge is, though, you're only making a commission.
Yes. Can
you live off a commission? For the most part, the answer is no, especially in the beginning. So it takes about 10 years to actually build an actual established agency. And then at the 10-year mark, and I didn't believe the person who told me this many years ago when I first started, but at the 10-year mark, that's when you actually will see that, okay, I have enough commissions coming in from multiple brands that I'm able to sustain the business and grow now. And that's kind of what happened to us, right?
Oh, gotcha. So essentially when you said your three divisions in your company, the agency is like a rep agency.
Correct.
And then when the LCBO buys, you're getting that commission.
Correct.
From that.
Correct.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So then it's just kind of leads into the next conversation on someone wanting to get in this space, right? You're going to filter out a lot of people on, it's not 1-2 years, get rich quick. It's a long game. You started this over 2 decades ago.
Correct.
Delivering, started with water. How did you even get the water? Like, how did you think at the time?
So I was at, it was summer of 1999, I guess it was, yeah. And I was in Glifada, Villa Mercedes, my last night out with my cousins, and we decided to order a bottle of Johnny Walker like we always did back in those days.
Red?
And they bring... No, I think they drank black label because they're the snobs from Glifada.
Okay.
So they drank black label at the time.
Because I drank a lot of red in my young days.
On the islands, it was all red.
All red,
So, so they bring the bottle, and to our table comes a bottle of IOLI in the glass bottle.
Glass, yeah.
And I'm like, hey, who ordered the water? He's like, oh, nobody. He goes, when you order a bottle of whiskey, they bring you a bottle of IOLI. So the first thing that hit me was, he just said it by name. Like in 1999, nobody knew any water brands.
Nope.
Like you might have known Evian or Perrier at the time, right? But nobody really knew any other water brands. And I was pretty impressed that he knew the brand by name. I liked the packaging, I liked the bottle, and I tasted the water. I'm like, wow, this is actually really good water.
Right.
So that day, it's like light bulbs are going off my head because I was in the bar business back then, right? Okay. I wasn't even in the importing business. And light bulbs were going off my head like usual. You have the typical entrepreneurial visceral gut thing going on. And I'm like, this could work, this could work, this could work. Leaving the next day, old airport in Athens. Yeah. And if you remember, there was like the, what's it called? Olympic Cafe with a pink neon sign or whatever, where they had like toast, zaboterie, like frappe, and whatever.
Live chickens running around, basically.
Well, we were on the beach at those times, right? So it was amazing to be at that airport. But point was, we would walk into the airport, I go to the cafe, and I said to her, "Mi posaki IOLI?" And she goes, IOLI. And she goes into the fridge and she brings me a bottle of IOLI carbonated water. I'm like, this stuff comes carbonated? So I took the bottle with me and I brought it home, called on my lawyer, John Soda. I said, John, listen, I got this idea and I'd love for you to give me some consulting on it and let me know if this is my next big play. Gets back to me, I go, what, 5 days later? He's like, Steve, listen, did the research? He goes, it's a long-term game to build a water brand. He goes, but if you're successful, it could work in your favor sort of thing. And here's the stats on how many, I'm going back in 2000 now, how many licensed establishments in Ontario are owned by people of Greek descent. And the number was like 35% of all licensed establishments were people of Greek descent. Like,
in the GTA, Toronto area?
In Ontario.
In Ontario, okay,
in Ontario. Yes. And it gets smaller outside of Ontario, but still it was a very high, disproportionate to how much population we have.
So wait, really quick, of the licensed businesses, right, small businesses, 35% were of Greek descent.
Yeah.
That's a huge 1 in 3 businesses.
1 in 3 businesses were people licensed holders. Yeah. So like all the steakhouses are owned by Greeks.
Yep.
And for the most part, many of them still are today kind of thing, right? All the family diners and mom and pop restaurants in all the small towns, they were all owned by Greeks. Yes. All the Greek restaurants in those days were all owned by Greeks, right? Even Italian restaurants were owned by Greeks at the time, right? They don't tell you that, but that was the idea. And then I remember looking back and I was doing some research on all the different distributors that were in the market. And let's say there was like 20 distributors. 10 of them were owned by Greeks.
Oh,
because I realized how big their market was to be able to sell to all these different places like, Empire, Kronos, Dement, Kariba, like the list of going on and on with distributors at the time. And so I was like, oh my God, there's so many distributors out there and there's so many Greek-owned establishments. This has to work. That was my theory. But the reality was I lost my shirt for the first 3 years.
Why?
I couldn't make money because number one, there's no money in water. It's very small margin. So you need to drive major volume. That's the first thing. The second thing was I went looking back now, I went to my distributors too early on, which cuts your margin because they're not there doing deliveries.
Yes.
I should have went direct to the consumers at the beginning and then built up enough of a bank to get myself established, and I didn't. So I would go to distributors, and I have to go and sell the water anyways for them to go make the delivery for me, which was kind of an oxymoron at the time.
Just killing your margin.
Killing my margin, yeah. And then I was just spinning my tires all day long, just trying to grow. And that being said, I was dealing at the time when IOLI was owned by Athenian breweries. I was dealing with an export manager by the name of Konstantin Kornprobst, and he was, we're still friends to this day. And he's like, listen, since you're going to the restaurants, I have Alpha beer. Bring in the Alpha beer, go to them with the case of water and the case of beer so you can make 2 deliveries. One delivery with 2 products. I said, okay. So I brought in, I don't know, like a pallet of beer, whatever it was, 80 cases at the time. And we sold the beer pretty quickly. I brought in 2 pallets and became 4 pallets and became 10 pallets. And we brought in a wine, and then it just kept growing. And early on, I remember, I'll never forget looking at the numbers. I was like, okay, I make $1 a case on water and I make $4 a case on beer. It's very simple. Yeah. I got to bring in more products, expand my portfolio, and get into higher margin goods and sort of stuff, right? And we did. And that's what got me out of the red after being in the red for 3 years. But
and you didn't want to give up in the first 3 years?
I didn't want to give up.
No,
I didn't want to give up.
But did you see the bigger play? Or at the time it was like, I have my restaurant bar and then I can make money off this? Or was it, I'm going to be a distributor?
In 2004, I got out of the bar business completely. I just said to my brother, we're going to part ways because I just need to focus on this business full time. And that's what was the pivotal changing moment for me, right? Was going into the Kolonaki full time, because 2020, 2021, and 2001, 2, and 3, it was part-time, full-time. And then in 2003, I made the decision to go full-time. So in 2004, I sold off my share of the business at the bar, and I was full-time doing this. And then the beers had come in and stuff. And then we just started hustling, and I was making more moves, bringing in more revenue, which is great. Got myself out of the red, which is great. The first 2 or 3 years, I was still living at home.
Okay.
So I had a small little home office. And my dad at the time was paying my internet, believe it or not, because internet and computers were very expensive back then. Yep. I couldn't afford the internet bill.
This is early 2000s.
Yeah, 2001.
Any kids at that time?
No. Okay. My daughter was born a few years later, and my son in 2008, and Nicole in 2006. And which also changes your game, which I'm sure you saw the same thing. The clarity changes as soon as you have children.
Yep. Purpose gets defined,
Feeding more people.
Absolutely.
What are they going to be like when they're at this stage? Kind of thing, right? So a million things go through your mind. So what ended up happening was I was still working from home. I had a logistics warehouse that I would go to every day, load up, and go make deliveries. And then as we expanded and kept growing, everything just kept growing bigger and bigger for us. And then we just brought in more fine foods, more alcohol, and vice versa. And then it just kept growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And today we're doing about probably 50,000 cases of beverage alcohol, and about 60,000 cases of fine foods and beverages that we're importing into our warehouse. And
that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Physically, your warehouse, so you're stocking a lot of the product too? Like
everything non-alcoholic is in our warehouse.
So EOLI, you still represent. Really quick on just water in Greece, right? Like I've probably the last 4 or 5 years, I've become a water snob, right? And it's just people, they'll laugh at me, right? And I'm like, first thing I'll look at if I'm traveling, purified or mineral. And I'm like, if it's purified, I won't even buy. I'd rather stay thirsty, right? And that's a whole other conversation. Greece in general, right? The water. So correct me if I'm wrong. The actual government states you cannot sell a bottle of water more than X. I think it's like 50 cents.
Euro cents.
Yeah, euro cents in the, the convenience stores. Yep. It's a government. But the water they have is phenomenal. Yep. And EOLI is good, but like any other brand you get, it's so good, right? EOLI, I'm obsessed with when I go somewhere and I see it's in a glass bottle. Mm-hmm. It's so good, right? Any input you have just on water in general, like when it comes to like, why is EOLI known? Like, why is it a good?
EOLI is, for starters, it's an artisanal well. And if you look at central Greece and Lamia, it's just surrounded by massive mountains everywhere. And the water takes about 20 years to actually come out of the earth. So right from the snow-capped mountains, the rain, etc., it travels through the actual mountains, and then it comes out the side as a natural spring that's there.
Wow.
And it goes right into the bottling plant and then gets bottled. So you're talking about a very natural water that has not been adjusted at all, because many waters are adjusted for flavor profiles and too many chemicals in and out of the brands. And so it has the highest levels of magnesium, potassium, and calcium, which are 3 things that the human body is in dire need of all the time. So when you consume EOLI, if you ever want to do the test one day, just drink and chug the entire bottle. You can chug the entire bottle.
Yes.
If you do that with other brands, a lot of times you will stop halfway through. Not because you're not thirsty, but because what happens is all the different contents in the water, when it gets to your taste buds, it starts triggering things in your mind telling you, I don't need more of this. So you stop consuming the water because you can't drink a whole liter. But with IOLI, because you're in need of all those chemicals, you need to have the potassium, magnesium, and calcium inside of you, trace elements, what they really are.
Okay.
And then your body absorbs all that. So it's telling you, give me more, give me more, give me more sort of thing. So you can drink the entire bottle on its own.
Oh, wow.
And that's the main difference right there.
You really are the water guy, right?
Yeah. I've said this pitch, I don't know, so many times in my life.
But I'm actually interested when it comes to water. Like, it's what we consume the most in the day. Make sure it's good what's going in there.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Let's talk wines a bit, right?
Sure.
So I saw several years ago, you had Gary Vaynerchuck. You were at one of his dinners here in Toronto.
Yeah.
I believe he was launching his own wine brand.
We launched it with him in Canada.
Okay, so the fact that Gary, who's...
Shout out to Gary V, if I'm even allowed to do that right now. I'm hoping one day he watches this.
Hey, let's try to link him in here.
Let's try to link him in, yeah.
But like, that's a big deal. Gary's a social genius. He's everything. The way he runs his business. He started in wine. He comes to the country north of him to launch his brand, which he's proud of.
Yeah.
And he taps onto you. Like, how does that even happen? Like, that's got to be a pinnacle of appreciation, no?
Absolutely, right? And when he launched the brand, I got connected to him through a friend. We had also had the dinner prior, and that was kind of nice. And then I went to New York and met him in his new offices and stuff. And I got to actually sit with him, which is very rare for a lot of people.
One-on-one.
He doesn't sit in meetings very often either. But, you know, it was a great moment, and listening to him speak was great. It's very motivational. He's helped me get motivated through a lot of my difficult times, especially in the early on years. And for me, when I brought on his brand, it was kind of a personal thing because I'm like, you know what, this is a guy that's also helped me stay motivated during dark times. And so bringing his brand into Canada for me was a big deal. And then literally, I think within 12 months, he ended up selling the brand for a big chunk of change.
That quick.
It was one of the fastest sales ever in history for, we'll call him a celebrity brand owner. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Did he learn anything from you about this market or wine or anything?
He learned how difficult it is because of the monopolies. So getting into the market was difficult, but once you're in the market, you stay the course of time, right? Which is great. One of the things that I did appreciate about him a lot was very early on, like he was doing live videos from his office in New York. You know, hey guys, I'm in Canada. LCBO, KOLONAKI Group, here's their website, visit them, call them, you want the product, it's there. Till this day, we still have people who email us about the brand, Well, for all the brands, for Armand, for Belaire, for, you know, his wine brand, people still email us to this day asking us, you know, I can't get any more, where can I get the brand or whatever? Because in those days when the brand arrived, and then he made the video podcast and he put it out to everyone saying, call this number or, you know, go on their website and email them. Our online hits went through the roof like 1,000 times or something. It was crazy.
From his community, of course. Yeah.
And then you realize how powerful his reach was at the time.
Yes.
And prior to that, quick little story was we were at the dinner downtown at a steakhouse, and we're having Thalia wine, one of the wines that we own and sell here in the market and now globally under Ortoma. And he posted a video about Thalia saying Greek love or whatever, I love the wine or whatever. So that was kind of a nice thing for him to do. I didn't ask him to do it or anything like that.
While he's plugging his wine, like that's a big deal.
Plugging. At the time, he didn't have the wine yet.
Okay.
We were at a dinner for a California producer that I work with, whom he knew. And he's like, okay, I'm going to have dinner with you. So he sat next to me the whole time. We talked the whole time, which is kind of great.
Amazing.
And then he goes out and he says, I'm going to do a video and I'm going to just tell Toronto where I'm at.
I saw that. I remember seeing this when
he goes out and he says, hey, Toronto, I'm here on this street. You know, I hope to see you. In 1 hour, the whole street was gridlocked.
Isn't that crazy?
There was probably 300 people, 400 people outside of the restaurant.
At nighttime, right?
At nighttime, like 11 p.m. And they blocked the streets and they were all there and taking photos, selfies, you know, asking questions, which is always kind of great, you know. And he was awesome.
And not a sport athlete or actor, like someone that helps and change people's perspective in life and everything.
For business motivation, you know, and I'll never forget this one video he did. He was in the car driving, rolls down the window, a girl comes to the door and says, you know, Gary V, in 3 words or less, give me some motivation. He looks at her and goes, you're going to die.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
And it's like, wow. Oh my God. So she was blown away. And it's written, I believe, on his wall. In his office in New York and stuff.
Because of that, I put it on my wall in my office, right? And it's a reminder, right? Like it's just, it's so powerful.
Time is limited, right?
And most people that walk in my office are like, dude, that's kind of dark. I'm like, it's the opposite of dark. It's the opposite.
It's light.
Live.
Yeah, of
because
course.
we will be there, you know?
Course.
Absolutely.
Not living your best life is dark.
It's dark.
You know, just sitting around.
Just existing.
Existing?
Yeah.
That's dark.
Absolutely.
Right?
I see a common theme. You say, hey, from your failures, you keep learning and you keep applying it to your next deal and your next deal. But there's brands that come here. Do you now filter and say, what's your plan? If I'm taking on your beverage, are you trying to sell this? Like, what does that look like? Like, did you know Gary Vee was trying to sell that? Because you're putting sales and marketing.
Not at that speed.
Not at that.
I don't think he even expected to go that fast.
Gotcha.
To be honest. But then they came in early on before it became something super big. And they're like, let's scoop the brand now while it's still affordable, for lack of a better term.
Gotcha.
Affordable in that space.
Yeah.
And then I think the advantage that they got out of that was they got to utilize Gary as the marketer for all their other products as well.
Sure.
Right? So it wasn't really the buying just the brand. It's a California wine. It was a great wine. Okay, wonderful.
Yep.
There's a lot of great wines and brands out there. But the reality is you got Gary Vee. And for me, that's the priceless part, right? It was having him join that team and then having, you know, VaynerMedia and all that stuff, doing work for developing other brands out there, right?
Absolutely.
Which is what they're great at, sort of thing. And I think that was the value proposition for them.
Yeah. And then do you think, like, moving forward, do you factor that in on, or what's your plan? Like the 50 cent, what's your plan? Are you, obviously they're trying to sell it.
Is he going to try and sell it?
And get a B
of course
in front of their, right?
Of course he is, right?
So you know that and you just try to latch on and help grow that.
Yeah. Well, my goal is to help him grow the brand, build it, develop it, you know, build a foundation in the market for them, which is what I learned to do early on with Brett Varish and Scott Cohen was, you know, let's build a foundation for the brand and then just take it to the next level. And then if it sells, it sells, which is obviously the idea. And then to have legs for sustainability, right?
Absolutely.
So with 50 Cent's brand, it's going to be the same thing, you know, grassroots all over again. And then just build the brand for them. And then I want to say go along for the ride, for lack of a better term.
It's a great ride, great brand.
Great ride.
Yeah.
It's a great brand, yeah. I learn a lot from them too, right? That's the other thing. I got to remember that. Everything that I'm applying to all the other brands that I'm working with is everything that I learned from the days of Armand de Brignac early on, right? Because I was given a 16-page document, the do's and don'ts of Armand de Brignac champagne. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And he's like, well, this is what you can do. And this is what you can't do with our brand. Huh. I've never seen one of those in my entire life. So he goes, so study this before you move on, sort of thing. It's like, okay. And I'll get one more motivational piece for those who are listening to the speech. You know, how did you get the brand to begin with, right? Yes. And people always ask me, how did you ever even manage to get the brand, sort of thing. So before I even got to the interview questions of, you know, what am I going to do with your champagne when I get the champagne, I was on the, I guess their mailing list, getting newsletters from them. And the newsletters were coming out saying, you know, Armand de Brignac champagne now available in, like, I don't know, Japan or whatever it was. You know, next newsletter would come out, Armand de Brignac available now in, like, I don't know, China or whatever it was, or Philippines or Greece or Cyprus or whatever the case may be and stuff. And I would email them saying, hey, I have an agency in Canada. I'd love to work with your brand, whatever. No response. Okay. And then finally, I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm sick and tired of emails anyways. So I just picked up the phone because Scott Cohen's name was the bottom of the email. And I said, hey, can I please speak to Scott Cohen? And they're like, you are? My name is Steve. I have an agency in Canada. Kolonaki Group. They're like, Kolonaki what? I'm like, Kolonaki Group. They're like, okay. Does he have an appointment with you? I said, no, but I don't want to speak to him. He eventually came on the phone, which was great. Scott, thank you so much for that. That changed my life. And we spoke on the phone, and then I go, I've been emailing you. I go, you don't reply to my emails. He goes, you know, please forgive me. He goes, we get like 100 emails a week of people asking us for the brand. So he goes, it's impossible to go through all the emails. And I'm like, you know what, I get it. And then it was only through phone calls that we kind of just touched base and got together and then realized we're going to be the fit that worked well for us. So my point is to everybody who's listening, if you're trying to start out with something, is don't give up. Keep trying. And if what you're doing is not working, try something else. That for me is a big thing.
That's like, great advice. Yes.
Change your course of action if it's not working. Don't keep banging your head over and over again. Change the course of action. Try something different. Yeah. So in my case, it was the phone. Maybe I'm just better on the phone than I am in writing emails to people. So that helped me a lot. And, you know.
Plus your persistence, right? Like you didn't have a resume of champagne before this. Yeah. Right. And then when you actually won it, did you feel kind of like imposter syndrome? Like, shit, can I even do this? Did you ever have that doubt?
Was it, what's the guy from Virgin?
Branson.
When he says, if an opportunity comes along, take the opportunity first and then figure out how to do it later. Yeah. Same idea, right? Yeah, like if the opportunity comes, just take it and you're going to make it work no matter what. Like don't sleep. Work 8-10 hours a day. Who cares? Yeah. What's going to really happen to me, right? Like, you know, and in the early years, I was working and never working out, which is another problem, right? So you end up putting on weight, you become sluggish, you know what I mean? But your excuse is, well, I'm working, 12, 18-hour days, so I got to build a company, right? And then a few years back, I'm like, no, my health has to come first.
Absolutely.
So then that had to shift towards being a healthier version of myself. A, because I have kids, and B, because I want to live the latter part of my life, the back 50.
Yes.
I want to be living in the best possible way I can. So you made a couple of bucks. What good is it if your health is deteriorating and you're pretty much half dead, sort of thing, right?
So true.
So my physical aspect of life has changed in the last few years, and I've learned to eat better, work out every morning whenever you can, sort of thing and stuff. And that has helped me focus more on business as well. So it's amazing how, I went to the gym this morning at 6, and I was so gung-ho to come see you this morning. You know what I mean? Because I felt great.
Yes.
I was getting dressed, feeling great that I'm going to see George this morning. You know what I mean? And that whole morning routine is amazing. What it does
changes everything.
It changes everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's hard because when you are busy and you're eating like shit and you're traveling and you're doing all this, you don't have a clear mind. But
correct.
And it's hard, and it's an easy excuse to, I got kids, I got this. Come on, man.
And there are times when you can't avoid it. Like you're traveling, you're going to be along the 401, because I don't know, I live on the 401 sometimes. I used to go and build the brands out in Montreal, like back and forth. Montreal was like nothing for us.
Sure.
One day in, one day out sort of thing, right? But where you're going to stop? You're going to stop at a Tim Hortons, Wendy's, or whatever it can be. So there are times where you're not going to eat well. I get it. You know what I'm saying? And, but at the same time, you still have to focus on the overall aspect of living a healthy life. And It's not just what you eat. It's training, it's your mindset, it's all that stuff. It's the circle you live in. It's very important, right? Do you have like people that are bringing you up in your circle, or do you have people that bring you down in your circle, sort of thing, right? Or you don't think they're bringing you down, but the reality is maybe through conversation, that sort of gives a negative aspect to you each day. I maybe spoken to you 25 times in my life, but I know that every time I get on the phone with you, I'm excited. I'm pumped.
Same.
I'm ready to go. Right?
Same, right? And you got to feel like misery loves company.
Absolutely.
And I find like even the littlest thing of like everyone just wants to like keep it. And like you said, it's like that drop in the bucket. It just adds up, and you find yourself just in a negative space. There's too much negativity out there already.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about wine. I'm not a wine guy.
Please.
I couldn't tell you what's a good wine, what's a bad wine. Quick side story. Our last startup, when that sold, one of the partners bought me a case of 48 bottles of wine. Asshole. I'm a vodka guy. Anyways, I'm not a wine guy. So it's like worst gift.
Didn't know.
Yeah, worst gift ever, but I get it. We're living in New York City at the time with my now wife, then girlfriend, fiance.
Yeah.
And I just put them in my alcohol case. And every time she would cook, I'm like, just go grab a bottle. And she would cook with red wine. Fine. Moved to California. We ship everything over. Her boss is visiting us now from New York. She's cooking for him. He goes over. He's like, Dina, are you cooking with this bottle?
Ouch.
And it was either Camus or Insignia. It was one of those. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, we're not wine people. I still have these. He's like, what? I open up the case. He's going through it. It's like, this is a $300 bottle. This is $100. I knew nothing about it. Ever since then, I'm like, okay, I would like to know. But today I always default to what's your house wine if you're in Greece, right? I'm simple.
Yeah.
High level, like what's a good way, I guess, how do we frame this question? What is your personal favorite wine, type of wine?
I get asked this a lot. I try and look for wines a lot of times from smaller producers, if I can, boutique producers or just family-run estates sort of thing. I tend to see that they have a lot of nice wines. The challenge with those wines, though, is that because they have small production, the cost of buying one of those wines typically might be like 50 or 100% more than the average bottle of wine. But it's okay because you're getting a good bottle of wine. You're supporting the smaller producers that are out there.
Sure.
I mean, I do believe that life is short, drink bad wine. So in that case, try and drink better wine. It doesn't mean you're going to buy the $100 bottles of Insignia or anything like that. But I mean, I find that when if we're out for dinner, for example, and we order a nice bottle of wine, a decent bottle of wine, the dinner goes better.
Okay.
The food and wine pairing is much better. The gastronomic experience you have is much better, right? So a good bottle of wine can change your entire outlook of how your dinner ended up happening that day.
Okay.
And that for me is a big thing. And I noticed that when I have, not so good wines or wines that didn't pair well with my food, then the meal is not what it should have been. Whereas if I had a little bit of a better wine, I noticed the meals always go off a lot better. The food tastes better. Everything's just better.
Really?
Yeah.
But your palate knows, right?
Yes, my palate knows. But I mean, the reality is if a wine pairs, like if a white wine, for example, pairs really well with seafood, your palate knows as well. Right? If you had red wine with seafood, you'd be like, this doesn't go really well.
Oh, gotcha.
Right? So it doesn't matter what I know. You know what you know. You know what works well, what doesn't. You don't want something sour or not sour, right? You also, you know what you like. People always say to me, you know, what should I drink? And I'm like, it doesn't matter what I think you should drink. Just find something that you like. And if that's what you like, then drink that, right? And then try and go down the exploring that path. If you like wines from Santorini, for example, then drink a wine from Santorini and try and explore other wines from Santorini until you find that niche of what you really enjoy, sort of thing, right? If you like Barolos, okay, have a Barolo wine and then try other Barolos that are out there and look for that brand over and over again, the Barolo brand, if you will, and just see what it is that you like and the different price points that you're comfortable with. And then try those wines, sort of thing, right? And that's kind of my advice, is just follow the path of what you like, and then you go down your own exploratory path for wines.
Okay, that's great advice. You have a bias towards Greek wines, right?
I do.
No? Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Okay, so, but you're also representing from Spain, from Italy, other countries, New Zealand. I didn't know you own Thalia wines.
Yeah.
Thalia wines. That's a great, it's typically white wine? Is that
white, red, rosé.
And rosé, okay. How do you even get into owning your own wine brand? Like, how does that happen?
Okay, I was 2007 is when I got the idea. I think it was 2008 or 7, whatever it was. In a restaurant in Montreal with, at the time, it was E035 was there. Skouras was there, I believe, Vaynerchuck, and we all went out to a restaurant. It was a David McMillan restaurant in Montreal after the Greek Wine Roadshow. We all went there for dinner. And David, who's a very famous chef in Montreal and a great personality, he was sitting there talking to us, and he goes, in kind of his very larger than life way, he's like, you know, I don't understand you Greeks. And now at this point, I was like, what? So, you know, your back goes up, you're like ready to go. What's this guy saying to us right now? And he goes, you know, what happened to your category? He goes, you guys went from like plunk wine, Retsina, all this cheap stuff, nothing really good. He goes, and now you went all the way to like, you know, E035, Skouras, Vaynerchuck, like Kriaris, like all these amazing producers making all these amazing wines, he goes, and you kind of left the middle ground empty.
Huh.
And he's like, what the fuck? He goes, like, when Portugal took off, he goes, I had like, you know, an army of $10 wines that I could bring into my restaurant, sell by the glass, and get people into Portuguese wine. Same with Spain, same with many, Chile, et cetera, right? That's how they developed the country. He goes, you guys skipped that whole thing and went right to having premium wines. Clearly, the entrepreneurial light bulb went off, went home that night. I'm like, I have to create a brand that we're proud of. 750 ml, $10 retail is my goal. I'm going to work backwards, find a producer in Greece that can do this for me. And then away we go. Yeah. So I start.
So that was the genesis from the chef.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
When David came on and told us that at the end of the night, for me, it was like, I have to create a brand that's going to be the Greek $10 brand that we're all proud of.
So the Thalia brand is your brainchild?
Correct.
That, by the way, Thalia, it's just such a great flowing name.
Well, when we were deciding on the name, oddly enough, I was in the US, Fort Lauderdale, and I was going to visit some of the liquor stores at the time. And I came across 2 wine brands that I really liked, aesthetically looking. And I started Googling all the wine brands that I loved, took pictures of them all. And there were one of the brands called Kate and Casey, I believe at the time. And I forgot the name of the other one. And I ended up Googling, and I found that the girl who was the artist for both these 2 brands that I loved was a girl from California.
Okay.
And I emailed her up and said, hey, you know, I'm trying to create this brand of wine, yada, yada, yada. I came across 2 labels. Apparently they're yours. She goes, yeah. She goes, and Kate and Casey just won the best wine brand, the best wine label in California or something. I'm like, congratulations. That's great. And she goes, okay. She goes, I would love to work on your project. You know, what do you need from me? She goes, do you want to see my portfolio? I said, no. I go, I've already seen the 2 brands that I like. She goes, okay. She goes, what else do you want to know? I said, have you ever had Greek wine before? She goes, no. I go, have you ever designed a label for Greek wine? She goes, no. I go, you're perfect.
No way.
That was it.
You didn't want anyone anchored.
I didn't want anybody anchored in what it meant to have a Greek label or Greek wine, etc. So she ended up designing the first round of Thalia for us, which we ran that for about 10 years, the first branding. And we had different names. And then I kind of did a small study group. And when I showed everybody the labels, like 50, 60% all chose the name Thalia,
right,
and all chose the design that she had at the time, which was interesting. So I said, okay, my visceral gut wanted me to go this way. Everybody has now said that's the brand, the way the brand should go, because I wanted a name that was simple,
yes,
easy to pronounce. It didn't have to have this long, drawn out, extracurricular, you know,
right,
Greek name that no one can say. And I needed to have a French varietal paired with a Greek varietal, because in those days, nobody really knew Airitico, Assyrtiko, Moscofilaro, you know, Malagousia, etc. So I said, okay, I'm going to do, you know, a blend with Syrah, for example. And at the time, we were bottling in Crete. So it was Syrah and Cozzifali, as an example. Sauvignon Blanc and Villana with the Crete varietals. And so we ended up launching Thalia, and it did well. It's now the number one selling Greek wine in the LCBO for Greek generalist wines, which is exciting.
That's huge.
Yeah. And then again, during the pandemic, having time on our hands, we ended up doing a rebrand of Thalia. And now we have the new bottles you see with the circles that are on there.
The circles, yeah. Beautiful bottle.
Rebrand, and ever since the rebrand went live, we jumped like 30% in sales, just off the aesthetic of the brand itself, which is really exciting for us. And so that became, at the time when we first launched, I'm going back over 10 years ago, we were at $9.95. Today we're $12.95.
Okay.
But still, it's that feel good $13 wine that you can still be proud of, tastes great, drinks great, and it's screw cap, lightweight glass bottles. And so it's the wine that people can pour by the glass or have as a house wine, if you will, whatever the case may be, or take to someone's home and still be proud of. Are there better wines? Of course there are.
Right. But I'm saying, so like at that $13 price point, even if whatever it is, can you give that as a gift? Or if someone comes over, you're pouring that and it's a respectful wine?
Absolutely.
It is. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and one of the things I noticed in the Greek category is the Greeks take so much pride, and good for them, in producing these amazing brands and amazing wines at the top level.
Right.
And then I don't know what it is in their mind. They have the whole HIMA bulk theory for the cheap stuff, and they just make it look cheap and make it taste cheap. Right. And I'm like, every other country in the world, because you got to look at everybody else to see what they're doing and understand where the difference is and the caveat is. Every other country in the world, France, etc., yeah, they all make premium wines that are nice, but I mean, their entry level wines are fantastic. Okay. Like Spain has wines that are like, 2-3 euros a bottle that are phenomenal products.
Really?
Taste really well, great packaging, etc. And I'm like, you know what? That's the difference. Their buy-in at the low level is always going to make you feel good about buying that wine, say for 10 US somewhere, ABC Liquor in Florida or whatever, right? So they're going to make you feel good about buying that wine. Whereas a lot of the Greek wines in the lower price points were very, I want to say, kitsch looking, if you will, and not something very attractive. So you're not going to, you better be a hardcore Greek to buy one of these, bring someone's house, right?
Because it's nostalgic maybe or whatever. Yeah.
And so the whole goal with Thalia was, how do we modernize that, right? Yeah. And so if you go back to 2008 when we launched Thalia, so now it's been quite a few years, like we were the first ones to actually come out with a red, white, and a rosé.
Out of the gate, 3 colors, 3 different blends. And literally, if you look at the Greek category today, everybody now makes a red, white, rosé wine as an entry-level price point. Okay.
And we started launching the white, which took off the fast for us in this little very like teal color.
Yes.
And today, if you go to the LCBO, it's been copied probably 20 different times. That people just took the same CMYK, whatever it's called, and they just
applied it there.
Applied it to all their brand. Ontario wines, Italian wines, everybody's now using that same teal color on their white wine sort of thing.
Imitation is flattery, right?
It is,
or whatever that's saying.
Totally. And so when we did the relaunch and the rebranding, for us, we wanted to stick true to the idea of what Thalia really is, and being one of the 9 muses of ancient Greek history. And so we want to take the inspirational side of that and just rebrand it. We did, and it's growing. And now we're in like 3 or 4 different countries. It's now officially under the portfolio of Audemars Brands.
Amazing.
Which is exciting. And and we're going to grow that slowly but surely.
Amazing.
And all the other amazing producers we have in our portfolio.
Yeah.
Which I'm really excited about.
We could talk for hours. There's 2 more things I want to cover before I know you got to run as well. Kids and running your own business. And then I just want to talk about the city of Toronto and the player on the map that it's become, like just a global city. But talk to me just kids in general. You have a son and a daughter, teenagers, a couple things. Like how is it running a business? Like you are the guy, like since we've been together now, your phone's been ringing off the hook. Like this is life, right? How is it just managing kids, making sure you're present, educating them, leading them, and running a business and still growing that? And then do you even bring them into the business as well?
So now that they're teenagers, this becomes a reality. The whole, what's the succession plan? What do you do with the kids and whatnot, right? So on the bad days, I'm like, you do whatever you want, just finish your school and don't get into my business sort of thing, right? Yeah. And then on the good days, it's like, I can't wait for you guys to take over the business sort of thing, right?
That's if you worked out that morning or not. Where's your mindset?
Where's your mindset that day, right? And so, so my son Peter is going to be 16 this summer, and Nicole's going to be turning 18. So she's going to university. So, very interesting times for both of them. But one of the things that I did very early on for them, and I think it's to their advantage and to mine as well, is I would from time to time bring them to work with me. Like, in our business, in the consumption world, you're pretty much, we're not open as a business 24 hours a day, but people are always consuming product all the time.
Yep.
So you might run out of something on a Saturday and say, hey, Steve, I just ran out of, water, wine, whatever. I need product for the weekend. I'm out, sort of thing. So from time to time, you head back to the warehouse, you load up your car, you go drop off a special delivery to some client that needs their product for the weekend. So I would take my kids with me and I would actually say, okay, we're going on deliveries today.
Amazing.
What do you mean deliveries? We're going to lift up a case. We're going to put it in the car, make an invoice, turn the computer on. Here's the customer's name, and do the whole thing step by step.
Amazing.
And they would just, because they already understand computers to begin with. That's one. So for them, it was very easy to understand, how does the mouse work? What am I doing? Where do I click? Click here, click there. Actually better than we do for that.
Right, absolutely.
In many ways. And so, okay, let's go load the car. You load the car, you go down to the customer. Did you get a proof of delivery? Yes. Did you get paid? That's the next thing. What do you mean get paid? They got to pay you. How much? So, when they were younger, there was still a lot of cash around. So, if the bill is, $300, for example, and they pay you $300, they would look and see $300 of cash. And it's like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? You don't show kids who are like 6, 7 years old that kind of cash money, whatever. And they're like, oh my God, you got $300 today. I'm like, no, I didn't get $300 today. This is the business's money. This has to go into the bank. Oh, okay. What about you? And I said, well, whatever is left over is what you make at the end of the month, sort of thing, right? At the end of the year, sort of thing, right? And so very early on, I tried to explain that and kind of instill what it means to make money, right? And as they get older, which is quite amazing, they start to ask you more important questions. And it's also because they're getting educated now in school, and they're like, okay, how much of that is profit or how much of that is expense, right? And then you see the questions as they evolve. So going back to your question about being involved with the kids, I've always kind of had to get them involved in what I'm doing because I want them to know when I say, hey, I can't come home tonight till 9, 10 p.m. before you go to bed. This is what I'm doing. Or these are the people that I'm with, sort of thing, right? Here's my team. Because, I started by myself.
Yep.
And today we have like 14 people working for the company. 11 of us are in the office alone, right? And so from time to time they'll come to the office and they'll meet the whole team, sort of thing, and hang out and get to know who they are, right? So when I say someone's name, they're like, oh, I know exactly who that person is and I know what they do, sort of thing, at the office. And say, yeah, well, tonight we have an event we're working at, down at this St. Lawrence Market or whatever case may be and stuff. So they understand the place, the people, what's going on around them.
The family that helps dad make money and support.
Absolutely, right? And it's like another family you have there when you go there, right? Because you're also responsible for everyone in the office too.
Absolutely.
So you got to make sure that their mental health is great. They're financially making money, right? Which is important for all of them because if your staff isn't making money, guess what? They're going to get a job somewhere else, right? If they're not, and if they are making money, they're not happy, guess what? They're going to get a job somewhere else, right? So you need to understand that too, right? So, and I try and instill a lot of what the ethos that we grew up with into our children as well, so that they understand no matter what you do in life, you got to give it your all. You got to be the best you can. Don't just go half-assed at things, right? Make sure you're doing, everything properly, if you will, and always keep your head up, stay honest. There's no easy money because if it's easy come, easy go.
Absolutely.
Right? And I learned that in the bar business very early on. Like, we're making so much money, my brother and I, in the bar business, and we literally had legit shoe boxes of cash. I look back and I said, look, what happened to all the cash? But the cash coming in, cash going out, sort of thing, right? And it was no control. Made a lot of money, spent a lot of money, had a great time, no doubt, right? In those days and stuff. But the reality was, I teach them control of money is one of the most important things. If you can control your money, then eventually it'll pay you back dividends over years, right? No matter what you decide to get into in this world.
Well, and that's instilled from our parents when you're going on the site with your father and
they're even tighter than we are.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Well, and they're going to comment on, you're spending too much, you're doing this, because they've had harder times than
Absolutely.
Us, right?
Yeah.
So that's amazing that you're getting them involved. Last chat, and again, there's so much. Talk to me about Toronto, right? I was born here, grew up in Niagara, moved when I was 19. So even though I'm from here, technically, I don't know the city. We're doing a lot of business here.
Yeah.
Every time I come up, there's, I think, 200 plus active skyscraper cranes, top 5 in the world. Like, it's booming. Cultures are here. The best brands, everything's here.
Everything.
You're living in the heart of the city, operating your business here. Just talk to me. Why should people around the world be excited about Toronto and want to visit it?
For one thing, Toronto's always evolving. Right? I mean, the first major city in Canada was Montreal. And then eventually with the referendums and stuff, a lot of the exodus occurred and then people moved to Toronto. And then Toronto now is just like a rocket ship taking off. So you still have a little bit of the old of Toronto and a lot of these great small little pockets in the city. And then you also have the new Toronto, the modern Toronto, the development of Toronto and all the new cranes and stuff and the towers that are going up, investment. Major companies are all invested here, et cetera, et cetera. Real estate firms are all invested here. All the major banks are here. Right? So the wealth is here, if you will. There's a lot of opportunity in the city. Are there, the downside of Toronto? Of course there are, right? Crime is slightly spiking up a little bit, but then again, within major cities, it's common. But on the overall global scale, it's still a very safe place to be, right? Any way you slice it. It's foreign to us to hear about crime. But then again, you're in a city with 5 million people. We surpassed Chicago's population.
Yes.
In 10 years, we're going to be another 3 more million people living in the city, probably is my guess, right? So Ontario will be at 20 million people, and it'll probably manage almost 50% of all the commerce in Canada, right? And the reality is we just go about our own business. And it's funny because we chatted about this earlier today, and every time I travel throughout all of Canada and the US and everywhere I go, but especially in Canada, every time I go there, people say, oh, where are you from? Oh, you're not from here. I'm like, oh, why do you say that? Oh, I can just tell by your mannerisms or the way you dress or whatever. You're from Toronto. I'm like, yeah, I'm from Toronto. They're like, oh, and they have something always bad to say about Toronto, nonstop.
Yep.
And, and you guys never think about us. And this Vancouver was a big one, or this one last time I was in Vancouver. Like, oh, you guys never think about us. And I go, we don't really ever think about Vancouver. I said, and to be honest, I go, we don't spend that much time focusing on Vancouver. I go, because it's not part of our daily agenda or grind. I go, you guys are the ones who are constantly bashing us. And we don't even think about you guys in any way, shape, or form as far as what's going on the West Coast sort of thing, right? They hate to hear it, but it's a reality.
It's a reality, yeah.
It's a reality. Like, we have so much of our own stuff going on in the city that we're just staying focused on all that. I mean, Noble's coming to town too. There's a lot of major hotels and restaurants being built in the city, right? There's a lot of great operators in the city. We've talked about many of them. And, and Toronto's becoming that destination for some of the best food in the world. Milos restaurants opening in Toronto.
I heard that as well, yes.
By August, September, they'll be open sort of thing, right? So everyone's kind of coming to the city because we're realizing, and I don't want to say we're the New York of Canada because I hate comparing New York to Toronto. New York is on a whole different level.
Different vibes, different everything.
Different everything, right?
Yep.
They're on a different hemisphere for that matter.
Yep.
But in our world, in the fiefdom that we live in here in Canada, Toronto is Toronto, still any way you slice it. It's a great city. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of opportunity here for those who want it. And what I realize is if you want it, you can have it here. If you don't want it, those people are going to be long gone in a matter of like 5 years from now.
Yeah.
There's no more passive income anymore in the city. Like, here, you got to go all in, and you want to have, grow and be successful and all that stuff. And the opportunities will always be there.
Absolutely. It's exciting coming here. Like, I love coming here, and every corner you're like, man, I don't remember this. There's new developments. There's everything.
Nothing's the same anymore.
Nothing's the same. And when I come and visit my family here, if I come with my kids, I'll leave them at my sister's or my mom's, and I could fly to New York, do meetings, come back in 45 minutes. Like, it's just, it's a great place.
It is.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Kolonaki Group. We're going to share all your links.
Thank you.
Social media, Instagram. What's the best way? So you have an online portal as well. I just want to make sure we talk about that. So people can buy.
We have KolonakiFineWines.com, KolonakiFineFoods.com. So you can look up all the brands we work with there. There's an online portal that we do all of our online sales from Canada, US, Europe. We're shipping to Australia now as well.
Wow.
Which is really exciting. Our online business is, year to date, it's like double last year sort of thing. So that's growing, which we're really excited about.
Can I buy, if I live in California, can I buy Thalia wine and that can ship across border?
Alcohol's a little tricky because they're getting across the border. So we have to get through some customs issues, but otherwise, yes.
You're working. Okay.
We're working on that. That's for sure.
All right, man.
But the fine foods are everywhere, and that's great. And I appreciate the time.
Fine foods, really quick, just so people, the last few years for my company in the States, we've been ordering from Kolonaki Group the food baskets.
Yeah.
Right. And it's been a hit. Culturally, it's not like we're just buying Greek food and we're sending it to Greek clients. It's like, Italians, Americans, like just everyone. And like we get like this deluxe basket, and it has everything from the wine, the oils, the different snacks and the foods. And it's been a huge hit. And I even have clients like, all right, where can we get this from? Can we do that? So I love that side of the business, because you're also introducing people to food that they don't even know exists.
Correct.
Right. And then it's like, oh, you know what? I love pastelli. Yeah. Like that was in there. So I love them, man. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. I mean, and I thank you as well for the support and stuff. And because we do get feedback, just so you know. And like a lot of people are like, oh my God, I had no idea you guys had this honey or this olive oil, whatever the case may be. And then a lot of times we'll actually see them ordering online.
Yes.
And then getting shipments back to their homes, which is also, I guess, ultimately the ultimate goal sort of thing, right? It's just to get people to try the products. So once you try their products and you expose them to stuff, it's a whole different world out there. And it's funny, we're just talking, when I mentioned I'm seeing you today, they were already talking about what new products we have coming in the market in the next 3 or 4 months to have them included in this year's round of baskets. So you have all new stuff or whatever.
I love it.
And I'm like, I'll tell George when I see him today that we're already working on the next brand or whatever, what's happening out there. So it's exciting. And I thank you again for having me today.
Oh man, keep crushing it.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Invigorate Your Business with George Stroumboulis. Please hit the subscribe and like buttons and follow me on all the main podcast streaming channels. Also, please share your comments when you can. I appreciate your help in expanding this network to a worldwide audience. Until next time, stay invigorated.